Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben. This is Books with Megascon here with Nikhil from Shelf-Esteem to talk Sun Eater. How are you doing, Nikhil?
Hey Ben, I'm doing good. How are you, man? Thanks for having me on. I've loved your channel for a while now. And I just love the positive
Oh, thank
energy
you.
you have towards like booktube and the joy of reading. So it's fun, man. I'm excited to chat. It was fun getting a little mini concert before the stream begun. So really enjoyed that. Happy to
Oh,
be
there's
here.
my ukulele, uh, and yeah, it was fun jamming with Nikhil for a little bit before. But I have loved your channel ever since you started it, and you've been just such a burst of positive energy yourself into our booktube sphere. And just seeing you talking about, Sun Eater recently is one of your favorite sci-fi series, and picking up Shadows Upon Time on release like I did, I just knew I wanted to have you on to talk Sun Eater. So, I am so pumped. And we
Me
are
too.
going to start with non spoilers. So, if you have not read book 7 or not read even any of the series, we're going to start spoiler free just about our experience of the whole series before we start talking maybe more specifically about book 7 non spoiler before getting spoilers later. So, if you have not read Sun Eater, you can stay for a little while. And I am curious, now that you are done with the whole journey, Nikhil, how do you feel about the entire series, and just what is your experience that you're really sitting with right now being done?
That's a very good question. I mean, it's a world of emotions because I still remember in 2021, I was like around when I was deep into watching BookTube, but I hadn't even considered making a channel yet. And I saw Mike's book reviews. Mike was talking about the Sun Eater
Yes,
series,
me too.
and it
Me
was
too.
on right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I feel like he's the linchpin for all our reading discoveries. But I remember him mentioning it. I think Demon in White, the third book, had just come out, and so not a lot of people knew about it. I believe even at that time Christopher Rocchio was on kind of uncertain ground about where the
Mhm.
series was going to go because it didn't have the readership it has now, which thanks to booktube and Mike and so many others who kind of brought spotlight to it. But at that time it was kind of early days, and so
Yeah.
I just decided to try Empire of Silence. And I read it and I was like, wow, this is really great. And then I read Howling Dark, and that's really where the series takes off and becomes its own thing, I think. And I
Oh,
was
for
blown
sure.
away. I've never seen like philosophy, um, uh, kind of hard concept sci-fi wrapped in a space opera with a complex character that you could really relate to, even when there might be an unreliable narrator at times. I loved the blend because oftentimes you find space operas that are less heavy on the sci-fi,
Mhm.
or the sci-fi may not have necessarily dimensional characters or side characters, and I felt like this series had it all. And so I found that very interesting. I found Christopher Rocchio's prose to be amazing. So I was just
Yeah.
hooked, and I started reading them all upon release day from Kingdoms of Death onwards.
Yeah.
And so I've been a Sun Eater fanatic since then, really. And getting to the seventh book, I was especially excited because it's a couple years of wait for us, or maybe a year and a half. I don't know. It always feels longer than it probably was, but I was very excited to see where the story would conclude because we knew what was going to happen. Spoiler free, of course, but we knew what was going to happen in the first page of the first chapter of the
Mhm.
first book. And so we would have thought that like, hey, okay, all the pieces are set on the board. We're
Mhm.
gonna just go through the motions now in this last seventh book, and we know where this is gonna go. But the twists and turns that Shadows Upon Time takes was phenomenal. I mean, I was left guessing till the very last
Oh
page
yeah.
on what was going. You know what I mean. And so yeah, this is my favorite sci-fi series of all time. I think. You know. Um.
I'm right
Yeah.
with you. I have
Yeah.
not done many sci-fi series yet. I still some of the big ones I have yet to try, like the Culture series or
Oh yeah.
Revelation Space or Peter F. Hamilton, like some of those big chunky series. But I've enjoyed the Expanse as a sci-fi series. But yeah,
Mhm.
this one is my favorite sci-fi series, and I mean it really combines lots of elements from fantasy, the feel of an epic fantasy, and so it's just a perfect blend of all these things that I love. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like you, I came upon it because of Mike. I think maybe Kingdoms of Death had was out already by the time I first started, and I
Sure.
binged the first four And from, I would say, early on in Empire of Silence, I knew that this was just for me, like just it was sweeping me away just out of myself, and I was so immersed in the story. And even I can take a critical remove from Empire of Silence and recognize some clunkiness, uh, and but
Sure.
it didn't matter. I was just so invested in Hadrian's story from that early coming of age point, Empire of Silence, and then just tracking how absolutely crazy things get through Howling Dark and Demon of White. And I was just so swept away, and then put through the emotional ringer in Kingdoms of Death. And I became a fanatic just like you. And it's been fun to see it kind of blow up more widely in the last couple of years, and that we were in kind of the ground floor, and
Totally.
just it's been so satisfying to see it get more readers and recognition. And then I've been reading Ashes of Man and Disquiet Gods as they've come out. And
Mm.
I would say Shadows Upon Time is my most anticipated release I've ever had, because I don't have many favorite series that are like this big and complete. And
Mm.
so this is like one of those first big finales that are coming out while I'm reading it, and it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
backlist. And so I had huge expectations for this one, and it delivered. It delivered. I loved it. I wouldn't call it the most perfect book ever, and I think I probably had more emotional impact with Kingdoms of Death, which
Mm. Yeah.
I think got a few tears out of me towards the end. And maybe some of the sections in Demon of White I found just uh, utterly engaging to the max extent. But as an ending capstone to this whole giant experience, I think it was extremely satisfying. And like you said about it's the surprises and twists and turns, I think of myself as very spoiler averse, where I don't want
Mm.
to know anything that's coming up. I feel like it lessens the impact of I just like love being
I'm the
surprised.
same. Yeah.
And so getting those spoilers on the first page of Empire of Silence, where you feel like a giant massive event that's coming in the end. I I was worried that was going to lessen my experience, and I don't think it did at all. He so brilliantly brought in all these twists and turns and
Hmm.
things that he didn't put down as on that first page. And how he got there was so impactful. And so it didn't take away at all. And yeah, I've always just been blown away by Rakio's writing. I
Yeah,
think he has
yeah.
a flair for the sound and rhythm of language, and he studied rhetoric and classics in college, and he's kind of
It
this old
shows.
soul.
Yeah.
And like I read book one, like knowing that Rakio is kind of a young guy who wrote Empire of Silence, like published it right out of college. And I was so impressed by the wisdom I felt that was in these pages and in these characters, like Tor Gibson, and just
Yeah.
wondering, just amazed at how a young person like Rakio uh, could be so seemingly wise and world weary. And
Mm.
it's just always been impressive to me. Just someone so young, and we still have hopefully his best to come.
Yeah, yeah.
And as he gains more life experience and writing experience, and which is impossible for me to almost believe. But
It's
so
it
yeah,
is amazing that like he came out as a fully formed author. I think Empire of Silence must have been his first book or something, first published novel, and
yeah,
to write at that caliber at even on the first go around. And a lot of people consider Empire of Silence one of the weaker maybe entries of the, which is kind of it's such a high bar that even one of the weaker ones would probably be a 4 star on most people's list of a novel. But I think, like, to your point, he's just so he understands his characters so well, and he's so well read, and he understands, like, both the science part of things, the intellectual pursuit part of things, character writing, even spiritual undertones. He understands all these things and knows how to combine them. So I remember reading Empire of Silence, and I still felt like, even if I don't know necessarily how I felt, like I wasn't necessarily like, oh, this is the best sci-fi series ever on the first book, but I loved it. But I felt also it was the trust the process. I was immediately able to trust the author because he showed this command of understanding his world. And I think, I was thinking back to because you and I both are very into spoiler free reads and
Mhm.
things. So I was thinking, the idea of having a character recount their life story probably was to the benefit of the novel, because when one does that, there's going to be slight unreliable narrator syndrome
Mhm.
there, in the sense that you're seeing it from their point of view. So also the things that take him by surprise will take us by surprise. So there's plenty of room for spoiler free in a spoiler filled world.
Oh yeah.
Living spoiler free in a spoiler filled world. That's the quote. Yeah.
But even on reread, like knowing what happened in some of these early books, like they were just
Yeah.
riveting experiences to go back through. And man, the series to me is just a, such a fun time and a thrill ride and an emotional roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
I, it doesn't need it. It has deep themes and really rich character work and interesting world building and spiritual undertones that you could really dig into in great depth. And but just on the level of providing a fulfilling, cathartic story that I can pick up in my free time, in my busy life with work that I'm tired out from, and just escape to this far future where all these intense things are happening, and we have our hero and his motley crew that are trying to do good and avert disaster. And yeah, I just love the adventure side of it, and
Yeah.
the all of the just thrill of these things that happen throughout. And so I often don't hear that praised enough with the series. Uh, and and I think Rockio is just brilliant at providing a rollicking good time. And yeah, it gets dark,
Mm.
but even
Yeah.
with it being dramatic and high stakes, you can still have this entertainment, this thrill ride kind of aspect to it.
Yeah.
And it just works so well for me on that level.
Actually, now that you mention it, that makes a lot of sense, because I think about the same thing, that, there's heady concepts in it. Hadrian Marlowe is someone who takes himself very seriously.
Mhm.
And so the world through his eyes is a more serious place. But at the same time, it is a rollicking sci fi adventure. And even though there are those heady concepts and things, you can read. I mean, I blazed through this book in a few days. I just couldn't stop reading
Yeah,
it.
yeah, me too, me
And
too.
yeah, it's like, even after long work days, it's the last thing you would think is a very complex sci-fi world, trying to explore that when you're tired or something. But somehow he makes it cinematic enough that you feel like, oh, I'm in this world, I'm enjoying it. And I even though it the way it's written gives you pause, it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily, it adds to the reading experience, well, rather than taking away from it.
And the style is not one that's overly dense. I mean, he'll throw in a $10 word every now and then that I wasn't too sure. I might have to look it up later. And but the prose is not particularly dense. It's fairly digestible while still feeling elevated and just he's not overly just unsubtle. And I just
Mm.
love his style of doing a lot of showing and sometimes telling. And in some of those early books like Empire of Silence and Howling Dark, I think maybe go a little overboard with Hadrian's just introspection, or that kind of future narrator breaking in a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
too many times, or for too long in the middle of these intense scenes. But I think he kind of ironed that out as the series went along. And once we're in Demon of White, Kingdoms of Death, man, these reads just flow.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and man, so I love this series. I don't know that I'm gonna call it one of my utter favorite series of all time if I combine it with fantasy. Like some of the my
Sure.
favorite fantasy ones have had more of an emotional impact for me, like Realm of the Elderlings.
Oh.
Mistborn is the original trilogy that got me into reading fantasy as an adult, like just such an emotional time. uh,
Mm.
the Warlord Chronicles, historical fiction fantasy by Bernard Cornwell. Like I've definitely, I think, fallen more fully in love with a few other things. And I think some of the thematic work kept me at a little bit of a distance, I think, in the end with the series, especially with the some of the religious and spiritual theological theming,
Mm-hmm.
and things kept me at a little bit of a distance. But overall, it's still really special for me, and
Yeah.
I'd say anyone, if you haven't taken the plunge and gone for it, go for it and see if you connect with Empire of Silence. And if you're on the fence, go for Howling Dark, because that's where it truly takes on the feel of what the rest of the series is going to be like as we kind of get out and see some of the wider crazy world that Chris Rocchia devised from his imagination. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it only escalates from there. But I I I think we've talked enough about our whole series experience, so I might want to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
to just Shadows Upon Time, which is
Let's do it.
fresh in our memories now. And so, if you have not read book 7, I think we'll go to spoilers, because if we even talk non-spoilery about Shadows Upon Time, we're likely going to spoil some things in the prior books. So
Mm.
I think we'll go to spoilers for the whole series, but we'll probably make our way through book 7 as we go. So if you have not finished, I would pause here and come back to it later once you have finished all the books. And
Once you
let
binge
me,
them all like
yeah,
we
yeah.
did.
It is so bingeable. All right, we are gonna change to spoilers, series spoilers, including book
Spoiler
7.
time.
All right, so series spoilers, including book 7. Book 6, Disquiet Gods, leaves off on this absolutely insane sequence that happens in Vorgosos. Hadrian returns to where we'd been in Howling Dark, has some more chatting with Brethren. Brethren ends up kind of dying, but leaving behind this being orphan, which contains its consciousness, sort of. And Hadrian encounters one of Karnsagar's, beings, and bests Karnsagara and escapes from Vorgosos with Demiurge, with Orphan, and now we're left with the kind of aftermath of this battle, where there's these different factions uh, kind of hanging around Vorgosos, including the Latarian fleet with Lurian, and the Solid Empire fleet and the Chantry. And book 7 begins with a little bit of a time skip. And I was so curious how book 7 was going to begin. But
Yeah.
I absolutely loved Act 1, where we get caught up on what happened and the aftermath by having all these different characters tell their piece of the story. I just couldn't have loved this start more. Like, it blew me away. Have always loved through the short stories and novellas getting non-Hadrian point of views in the series. I think
Um,
Rocchio totally brings to life these other characters through their POVs. He's amazing with POV voice. And man, I just went crazy for this and was so on the edge of my seat. Like, wait, what happened next? What happened next in this
yeah.
aftermath? Like,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
my god! Like, what did you make of this opening sequence?
I loved it. It was actually one of my favorite opening sequences of any book in the Sun Eater series.
Oh, yeah,
And and I felt like, oh man, to your point, Christopher Rocchio really allows for more POVs in this, which I love because it's nice not to see the turn of events from just one character's point of view, because in relationship to that person, the other characters are going to be side characters, especially with someone like Hadrian Marlowe, who has very much a singular vision of himself and the people around him. And so seeing these other perspectives, I thought was fantastic. I also thought the remnants of Karn Sagara and trying to basically uh, destroy those, because it's like Karn Sagara can keep replicating to infinity and cannot be destroyed. So I thought that whole sequence was really interesting. I thought the politicking was fantastic, actually, in that first sequence, because again, you expect that all the stage has been set. Now there's a singular focus to this novel, but it isn't, because it's, if you want to go, I guess we're going into full spoilers now, but
Mhm.
if you want to go destroy a planet's sun, it's, and you have the weapons to do it. It's still not quite that easy, because you need people on your side to do it. There's still the Cielson 1700 world ships, or whatever it was, this massive, where each one is so big that it could affect the gravity of the planets it's near,
And then there's
or it
what's
could
going to happen with the human political factions, and
yeah,
is there just going to be utter chaos and war and disaster right after that among the humans? How are things going to fall out with all those factions?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then there's the Watchers as well, which we really come to realize in the last book and this book are kind of the true antagonists of the series, and kind of are the puppet masters of Doriaika and the Cielson, and that
Hmm.
we knew that he was going to be destroying the Cielson's kind of power through what he did at Gadadin, but nothing was ever given away about did Hadrian succeed in destroying the antagonistic Watchers, and
Mm.
so there was this maybe even more important aspect of the resolution that we didn't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
just from this first section, though, I was riveted with what was going to happen. Like, was he going to be able to convince the Latarans to stay with him as allies and communicate with Lorien? And Lorien's not answering his calls, and that was just continually suspenseful. It's like, is he going to get through to Lorien? Uh,
Mm. To
the
the
Chantry, yeah, go for it, go
Yeah.
for it.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say, to the Lorien point. This is one of those few instances in the Sun Eater series where that Dregs of Empire
Yeah,
really was a great read, and
yeah,
almost a necessary read to understand why Lorien feels about Hadrian the way he does now. Because their
yeah,
relationship gets a little fraught, and it's
yep,
in no small part. Of course, there's the final nail in the coffin in Book 6 when Hadrian, I guess, attacks the ships, right? Without telling Lorien what's going on, kind of keeps it a secret from him. But the real fissures of that starts. Lorien's undying loyalty to Hadrian's cause
yeah.
begins to fracture after Dregs of Empire. So I feel
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
was a
He
really
starts
necessary. Yeah.
resenting Hadrian when he's just stuck on Volusia, and he hears rumor that Hadrian is just living it up on Jad, and out of and and so he starts to build up this resentment, and then you realize Lorien does have his own identity apart from being Hadrian's kind of right hand man, and so yeah, that read really fleshes out his character in a really nuanced way. But
Yeah.
I'm rooting for them throughout this book to kind of be friends and to honor their relationship that had built up over so many years, and that they could trust one another even if they can't actually communicate very much. And so I was rooting for them, and then I was just so distraught when Hadrian was trying to make his alliance with the Extrasolarians
Hmm.
and Lorien, and the Chantry like infiltrated the Demiurge, fired off, destroyed a ship, and completely messed up Hadrian's ability to build his alliance, and then it was this tense standoff with these Chantry Sentinels that we've never seen before, and like the sense of danger and thrill of just reliving these scenes of the Demiurge being attacked, and like I just
Hmm.
didn't expect that to even be possible,
Yeah.
and just one of those examples of a brilliant twist and turn that Rocky introduced here
Yeah, because
early
it
on
makes the
to keep things
stakes
fresh. Yeah,
feel so much higher in this book, actually, when it should, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't have been. You know,
yeah,
because again, we know where it was going from the beginning. But there's points where you're reading about it, like you mentioned, the Demiurge being attacked, the Chantry presenting itself as the real other puppet master of sorts for the humans, and those are things that you feel like this could go wrong, even if you know where certain parts of it at least end up. So I
yeah,
thought that Chantry aspect of it, them not hiding, working in the shadows anymore, that and kind of revealing themselves in that first third of the book is was pretty
Yeah.
harrowing to read, actually, because you
Yeah,
realize how
and
much they'd been. Yeah, yeah,
oh, for sure. Like the reveal that they've just been building up their strength on Earth and been hiding that Earth was livable and that they're hiding kind of all of their kind of technology and what they can
yeah,
do and it's still so even though people maybe have a sense that the Chantry is maybe corrupt or evil in some ways or hypocritical when they find out that they are like utterly hypocritical that their preaching of anti-tech and is just a total front for them doing exactly what they're preaching against. Like it still surprises people, and I thought notes like that really hit as very believable. Of
mm,
people just assuming these organizations are have holding to some part of what their supposed core beliefs are, what they're preaching to the wider galaxy, and it's chilling to when that the reality is revealed and it still manages to surprise people. And
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
details there were just incredible with what these sentinels could do, and they have these really advanced AIs and things that you would only associate with the extra Solarians before, and I think Rocky had just throughout this book really brought to life this extra villainous faction in a way that like they really were sidelined more before. It's like
Mm,
seeing like okay they don't have like total power because the over the Emperor, but in a lot of ways like they were more powerful than we ever knew, and William was holding them back through his own leverage and blackmail, and one of the really interesting things about where this whole series and book leaves us is how like with William not having that leverage over them anymore, that they're out of the shadows, and what's going to happen to the galaxy. Like I just it's feels like there's a lot of fertile ground for sequel books or series in this world where there's this big power vacuum now, and we can see how it all plays out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But one of the brilliant strokes that I can't stop from talking about is how the genetic keys were introduced, where we
oh
see what
yeah.
that leverage was. That we knew about this, that like this was one of the holes that the royal family had, but we didn't realize like the details of it, or like the logistics of like, oh, like William physically needs to open these bunkers where the genetic keys are kept,
Mm,
and if he's not doing it, like they just get blown up, and then the whole Palatine class is
Jesus,
completely
yeah,
prevented from reproducing anymore. And so yeah, like he introduces that, and then we realize at the end with one of those details of Nicephorus getting killed by the Sentinel that they just doomed maybe the Empire to chaos because
yeah, yeah.
they don't have those genetic keys anymore. Like little things like that have me just my mind going so many places for what's happening in the years after this book ended. And
I think about that a lot.
uh,
Yeah, because like the emperor was a genius at consolidating power
mhm.
and also keeping it centralized whilst also decentralizing certain aspects of it enough that there would be at least fail safes. But with him, kind of jumping ahead from the first third of the novel, but from him, kind of leaving exit stage left essentially. Then it kind of all falls to Nicephorus, and as we can see, that's a doomed thing for all the Palatines involved. But I think
Yeah.
also, what do you think about? I remember one part in particular that broke my heart, and probably really was harrowing for Hadrian to realize, was when he discovered that the Chantry knew about certain crucial information about the Watchers and the
Oh
Cielsen, and like
yeah.
deliberately kept that because they wanted, like, it was all political move, like the fate of humanity was a political move to them.
Yeah, like he was just not able to believe that and not that humanity is not on the same page of fighting this extinction level threat, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was harrowing to see that reality and see Hadrian be saddened that uh, people could be working against a seemingly just obvious goal that we should be banding together to kind of achieve, uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think there's a certain level of idealism that Hadrian's always had that, Rakia has been bursting his idealism bubble, here and there over the course of the series, but he still maintains it through all of that. And watching Hadrian still stand strong, in this book and fighting, really grand supernatural powers who are trying to wound his spirit is one of those great uplifting, elevating things that it confronted with all this corruption or cynicism, that he's still maintaining, his own bulwark and fighting for what he feels is right and good. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
those really heroic aspects of the series that I've always deeply connected to. And speaking
Yeah.
of that heroic side, I love the Emperor character. I have ever since we met him in
Yeah.
Demon of White. He's just been so unique and fresh and different, not a cliched ruler emperor character. And it's this really wise emperor, and he has his blind spots. Like, he doesn't do a great job, I think, raising his children to really follow in his footsteps, or training a successor
Mhm.
that is similarly noble like him, or he doesn't understand maybe close bonds and romantic relationships, and he insults Hadrian at the end of Ashes of Man,
Right.
when Valka died. But he is truly this noble leader who is sacrificing so much for, his governing and holding things together, and governing seemingly well, as far as what he could do. And
Mm.
I've always really enjoyed seeing this character from Hadrian's point of view, and Rocky is just brilliant at giving us little bits and scenes. Like, I wish we had more time with the Emperor, but
Yeah.
the scenes that we do have Hadrian interacting with the Emperor always just hit so hard. They're so dramatic,
Yeah.
and the first one here was that just turned up to 11, because Hadrian goes to forums just so he can speak to the Emperor, and finally he gets the audience, and it's him alone through this remote connection, and something is off about it, and Hadrian's not sure what's
Mm.
off about it. And then there's these like glitches, and like they still had a kind of normal conversation though, where the Emperor was recognizably himself and his personality. And
Mm.
I just loved this scene, and even later scenes. Like, that one was intense, and William apologized to Hadrian for what he did at the end of Ashes of Man. And but then nothing could have prepared me for when we finally see him in person, and he's like suffering from the plague and in the tank, and basically communicating, where he's barely conscious through these machines. Like, that was so just tragic for me to see,
Yeah. Yeah.
that situation. um, but those scenes still, like, he maintained his strength through experiencing the plague, and being able to scheme with Hadrian, and when he was woken up at the end, it was like all these scenes with William just hit so hard for me. But I'd
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
to hear your experience with William in this one.
I thought this was the book where William came down to earth, like
Mm.
to the earthly beings level, because the whole series up until now, Emperor of the Galaxy, and he was far, and maybe this is one of the reasons why, to the point of end of Ashes of Man, where he says that kind of very insensitive comment about Valka to Hadrian. He probably in his mind didn't even think of it that way, because he's far removed from the problems
Yeah.
and from relationships that people have with each other, like how anyone else would have been, because he's kind of a singular figure, and even with his own family, like you said, Ben. So I felt like I always felt like his character had such interesting mystique around him
Mhm.
throughout the first six books. And then the seventh one is like where he becomes more grounded. The fact that he's like susceptible to the plague in the first case is a physical manifestation of that. And then the fact that like all the sacrifices he makes for the cause of helping Hadrian along the path to defeating the Cielson and defeating the Watchers. I thought that he's such a badass in this book. He's definitely one of my favorite
Yeah.
written characters in the whole series, just based on this book alone. It
Yeah.
was so cool, and again, like you said, every interaction between them was epic, even if it was a small one, and he's in a machine that helps him, live another day. It was still really interesting, and I think it was cool because he kind of finally also sees Hadrian as not necessarily like an equal, but like a colleague level
Hmm.
in a way, because he basically wants Hadrian to run the empire in his stead,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it's a very different their dynamic. They kind of speak to each other as equals, whereas before it was very much, emperor and his devoted servant of the empire.
Yeah,
So
it was
I thought
touching
that
when
was
when the
cool.
emperor, would say things like, you're my friend,
Yeah,
and you get the
yeah,
sense that the emperor has had so little connection on a just more basic personal level to people, where it's always been more formal, and he probably has so few friends, uh, and seeing him value Hadrian that much, even though
mm,
we've seen they haven't spent that much time together, and but I think the emperor just he's one of the few people that knows everything that Hadrian's done,
yeah,
to what he's gone through and what he sacrificed, and knows the strength of his character, and that he's not the demon, the extrasolarian demon, or
mm,
doing it for ambition and power, and so it's refreshing when I'm reading, because we know that Hadrian is not that. We have
yeah,
this whole insider perspective on Hadrian, but it can be so frustrating when he's accused of that, or when we see Alexander accusing him with all these things, and or random people on the street,
mm,
and for me it was just refreshing for Hadrian to be in the presence of the emperor, and for someone else to truly understand him and to trust him,
yeah,
and just I could feel like I could really breathe, and
yeah,
settle in, and and then Rocky is always gonna give you major world building and lore and political bombshells during these conversations too with the emperor, and so you're always just waiting for that next shoe to drop with these
yeah,
conversations.
yeah. It's
um,
so true.
it's just they're so brilliant. All these amazing interactions from Demon and White on forward. They're just they stand out as these incredible scenes, and this book
Yeah.
just we had a lot of them, and that was a real highlight for me. Um, but man, we go on a world like this book. The It's like a whirlwind from the beginning, where we're catching up on all that action that happened in the aftermath of the Battle of Argosas. Then
Augustus.
we go off to Forum, and and then Hadrian dresses up in his best ceremonial clothes the emperor gave him, and he's confronting the people that are going to accuse him that he's this traitor, and and he did fire upon the Solon ship, and
Yeah,
killed one of the strategists, and for a good reason though. But like it, I I really appreciate also that Rakio is not playing around with like his command of his magical powers here, because like I'm not too worried for Hadrian's like safety or physical stuff. Like
mhm,
he's really now able to protect himself magically. So
yeah,
like he's just coming from this position of power and strength, and having the demiurge on top of that, and I just really like this part where he's not going to be bullied. He's coming to talk to the emperor, and he's going to get what he wants. And
hmm,
you know, there was a cool scene where he confronts Aurelian, and some of those like hangers on in the court that don't like him, are and those noble people, and
yeah,
throwbacks to previous books. Like if you have read all these carefully, or read them recently, like the guy in Demon of White towards the end in the Battle of Berenike, Leonid Bartos, I think his name is, who
yeah,
like kind of just
yeah,
like becomes a cowardly like leader in that battle, and kind of just like pieces out, and like I'm gone. He's still there for some reason, and in a position of power, and insulting Hadrian, and like that just like offends me to my soul, that this person who was not giving anywhere near the level of service to the empire that Hadrian has,
I took
is criticizing him. Yeah.
I took a special offense to Leonid's haranguing of Hadrian because he was also joined by another character named Strategos Skoparker, which was me. And I would never have dogpiled on Hadrian like that. I have to clarify, I would never do that. But it
Oh,
was pretty hilarious watching
oh
myself
my goodness.
argue with Hadrian Marlowe.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I'd gotten the Diamond Edition of Empire of Silence through the Kickstarter, same one that Ben has up there. And I I kept refreshing the page when Christopher Rockley was doing the live stream. It was like 10, 9, 8, the page is about to go up. And I just kept rapid fire refreshing it. So I think I was one of the first people on the Kickstarter page. And I got one of the 4 add-ons, which was to be written as a character in the Sun Eater series. And it ended up being that it would be in book 7, and so I was like a Palatine Lord and captain of the Huntsman, which was a ship, and I, spoiler alert, die unceremoniously in the very beginning of the battle. But yeah, I spent the first entry point siding with Leonid and arguing against Basander Lin and Hadrian Marlowe. So again, I would never do that in real life, but my character, I guess,
Oh,
never
that's
know.
incredible. That must be such a thrill to see you written into these scenes and be a prominent
It was
character in
insane,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what? That's incredible. Like you're truly a piece of literary history, and I think there's a good chance this series and these books can really go on to be classics in the genre and to be read for years and years, decades and generations, and then you'll always be immortalized in there. Uh,
I'm
oh, I
so
love it.
It's so cool that Christopher did that.
Yeah.
I mean, no authors typically do anything like that. And then beyond that, he could have just written our names, in there, and then that's it, right? Like that could have been it. But he actually gave us roles, which is so cool.
Yeah.
No one does that. It's so
Oh
awesome.
yeah. Oh no, you were a real presence in this one.
For I was a real annoying presence to Hadrian Marlowe, I think.
Oh,
But
I just flipped to a random page in here. I have
yeah.
2 copies of the book since this my first one came damaged, and man, I just love seeing in italics we have a little Gibson quote like "rage is blindness" or "grief is deep water," and
Oh, I
sometimes
love that.
Hadrian will expound on a longer lesson that Gibson gave. But I just love Gibson's continued presence through these books and in Hadrian's psyche and being, and it's just his true father
Mm.
and the person that helped mold him into the person he really became, and that's one of those touches in the writing that always just is chef's kiss for me is hearing Gibson's voice in certain crucial moments, some of these lessons that Hadrian has kept with him. I just love that so much.
Oh, totally. I feel like Gibson was like the one big bright spot, that helped shape his formative years. Because everyone else pretty much let him down when he was younger.
And
Um,
the
yeah,
brilliance of us thinking that Hadrian's never going to see him again after he leaves Delos in Empire of Silence.
I'm right.
In book one, we think he's just going to be a presence in his mind
Yeah,
thereafter, but to bring him back like he did in the middle of Demon of White, and where
so cool.
because of the fugue, he was kept. He didn't age that many years since Hadrian found him again on Colchis, and then the even bigger surprise of at the end of Kingdoms of Death to kind of Hadrian be dealing with all of this loss of his Red Company and coming back to Colchis and finding Gibson still alive and able to spend Gibson's last years with him on a peaceful island. It's one of the more beautiful sequences in the entire
Yeah,
series for me, and that's the point in the whole series that brought me to true tears was
yeah, yeah,
the bittersweet reunion and parting that kind of Hadrian has with Gibson as Gibson's dying of old age there, and Gibson able to meet and interact with Valka too, and for them all to form this kind of connection was so touching, and
yeah,
but
yeah.
to carry that connection through then all these books through hearing Gibson in Hadrian's mind in all these different moments is just one of these really special touches in the series.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, totally. And that's a trope that you see in so many even sci-fi series, or Star Wars is like the one Ben Kenobi kind of
yeah,
visions of
yeah, yeah.
of a mentor figure or father figure. But I don't know. This feels different. Christopher Rocchio has found a way to take something that could be considered a trope, maybe in sci-fi fantasy, and imbue it with something that feels so specific to Tor Gibson and Hadrian Marlowe. It's a very specific relationship that, that in itself could be a trope. Down the line,
Yeah.
it's that unique that it feels, yeah,
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. No, it's done to such a great effect, and I think he likely was inspired by Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
he grew up loving Star Wars as I did, and
Right.
and I think what he did with it though through these books, and in getting them more time in the story together, and then carrying his voice through with his words of wisdom, and yeah, I it's just such a deep, meaningful part of the series for me.
Yeah, yeah.
But let's keep going through this
Let's
book
do
as
it.
we
Yeah,
take a
yeah,
tour.
yeah.
So they're back on Forum. He then gets to communicate with the Emperor, communicates his failure to, kill the Watcher Ushara on Sabratha in Disquiet Gods, and they're trying to strategize for the next step. And where do we go from here? I think from that point, after Hadrian leaves Forum, was that when he goes to the Gadadan system?
I think so. Is that when Ushara basically infiltrates people and turns them into
Oh, that was at
or
the end of
maybe
the
that's
Danu sequence. So
maybe that was
I'm
yeah, that's right.
because
Okay.
I read it this all within a couple days. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard to keep the actual sequence fresh.
Totally. Yeah.
So
So
like
much happens, but yeah.
I feel like I must have been at Gadadan where they all met up, or at some other location, but there was basically this big strategizing session
Hmm.
of involving the Tavrosi, and it might have been on Forum. Actually,
I
I'm
think
not
you're
sure.
right. Yeah, it
Um,
was on forum. Yeah.
but they're strategizing what they're going to do with the Tavrosi navy and ships, and then Basander Lin and the Tavrosi commander agree. We like your plan. We believe you. We're gonna go and try to destroy the Cielson, lay a trap for them, destroy
Mhm.
them, and that's when they go to Danu, and this is the first like major giant action set piece climactic sequence. Although the whole Act One was very very dramatic, and it was, in a way, it was the just continuing the climactic sequence from book 6.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But really, this first major sequence at Danu, uh, which we know is kind of like doomed, and so it's more for us just like, okay, what's gonna go wrong here, and how, like, and then there, man, this sequence, there was a lot to process of, uh,
Totally.
you know, they're dealing with like all these Cielson world ships, and there's like a lot of them around the planet, and Hadrian's trying to figure out, are the Watchers here? Like, is Doraica here? Like, oh, like his ship Darantune is not here. Like, our
Hmm.
plane is doomed. Like, we're not even going to be able to get Doraica and the Watchers. But they still have to deal with the world ships that are there, and then they get the distress call from people on the planet, and I don't know how you felt about this, but when we learn that there's like a few thousand people on the planet, and Hadrian is like, oh, I gotta save them. Like, I'm like, oh my god, like, worry about like the
Yeah,
battle
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
world ships. I'm like, oh my god, Hadrian's gonna go on the planet. But it ended up being, it wasn't like totally clear to us, the reader, or to me, that
Yeah.
this was like part of his plan, that he wanted to go there not just to save the few civilians or the few people on Danu that reached out, but like
Hmm.
that it was going to be a bait for bringing Drake. I don't know. That wasn't clear to me
Yeah.
until when it happened later, that he actually got
Got the right
the fish on
ship
the
on.
hook, and
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so that was interesting. I was like, why does he care so much about like risking everything and risking his life and his people for trying to save these few thousand? But I also think he's so staunchly moral and trying to do the right thing always, that it was he felt compelled to try to save them, even though it
Mm.
was just a few thousand people. That if he could do anything, he was gonna try to do it.
Try to do
And
it.
so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he
I
goes
did
on the
find
adventure down to the planet.
I did find it really funny how he's about to kill like billions of beings, through
Yeah,
destroying the sun, and he's like, no, 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 but these 3,000 people, we really got to make sure, But
but yeah,
yeah,
I
but
think that's a kind of statement of the morality of Hadrian, and also
yeah,
some of the larger theming at play of not being just consequentialist or the ends justify the means type of morality of really trying to hold on to always doing what's right, and
mm,
what's whatever within your power to do what's right, even if it's a little drop in the bucket, that it's worth this dangerous mission to save the few thousand. And I think he did a beautiful job actually of, I really didn't know where that was going to go. I thought it was not going to have much payoff, but it ended
yeah,
up having a lot of payoff of these Danuans um, eventually just like kind of settle into like village life on the demiurge, and there's kids there that are growing up the semi-normal life and doing kid things and bonding with the baby Cielson, or the child Cielson. And like there was
right,
actually major thematic payoff of like these people are just like regular old civilians, but they're living valuable lives, and they were worth saving, and like the trying to
mm,
find a home for them where they can just thrive or live safe, fulfilling lives is like kind of it was this microcosm, I think, for an overall kind of goal of Hadrian, or of Rakia's vision of like what are we fighting for. And so I
actually,
yeah
it just reminded me that it almost feels like that those sequences with the kids and the baby Sealson playing and all that, it was almost like a nice juxtaposition to all the horror and chaos that was unfolding around them. That it's almost like a testament to humanity's ability to find pockets of normalcy even amidst chaos, you know. And I just love the way that was done. I thought that was beautiful because it shows how complex these things are. It's like
yeah
how it's like when you see a show or a film and there's like just horrible things happening all the time. It's like what you don't see oftentimes in these films is the characters having normal
yeah
periods of normalcy in between that. And so it's like that's a little bit more reflective of life. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
so there's payoff, but initially like I didn't know what to make of these people, and they come out of their hidey hole, and they're dealing with like this legend, the half mortal, and they don't know what to make of him. And I love little touches of like one of the child's drawings was of Hadrian fighting the Cielson, so it wasn't like the Chantry's propaganda, or it wasn't totally convincing everyone in all corners of the galaxy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love Rakia's little nods to how like the truth has a way of getting out or worming its way into the larger consciousness, and little touches like that were great. And then though like he parlays this rescue effort into this insane action sequence where Hadrian stays behind and Duraica comes, and I love this type of heady action sequence where I don't fully understand what's happening at every second, but it was
Yeah.
it was unlike any action scene I've ever experienced, and they're fighting each other, across all different iterations of their possible selves, and like I just had a blast like trying to imagine that, and I was just like imagining like all these like infinite Hadrians and Duraicas going at each
Yeah.
other and
Yeah. Yeah.
parrying and scoring hits, and like I love that sequence. That's one where I'm gonna definitely need to go back and reread and try to make
Oh,
make sense
hell
of
yeah.
everything that was happening. But like little moments of like Cassandra staying and helping out with the fight. I love that she's this badass swords master from Jad, and even with only one arm is able to help out in these fights and do a lot, and have these intense father daughter moments along the way. And man, I ate up that scene there, and then it felt like a little bit unfair with Ushara getting involved and just being able to like manifest in space and just start
Hmm.
like reaching out and destroying the ships of the Taversi and the Solon ships. And
Mm,
it was just felt like, how can we fight against these odds? And but they have their equalizers, they have the Americana weapons and the demiurge. And I love
yeah.
like the tension around like Hadrian has the remote and he loses the remote. Like man, Rocky was just pulling all these little little switches and levers here where I was just so engrossed.
And
I was just there with him every moment during
that was one of my
this big
favorite
sequence.
parts of
Yeah,
the whole novel,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Was how about that sequence, that companion sequence where I think it was Ushara was who was presenting Hadrian with all these horrible possibilities of Cassandra dying and
yeah,
Lorien
yeah.
betraying them, and so
Oh,
that he would lose hope and kill himself,
oh
essentially.
my God. Have you read The Wheel of Time? Is
Oh
that one
yeah,
of the?
yeah,
Oh,
that's what.
so
Yeah,
that
flicker, flicker,
immediately
right?
reminded me of Flicker Flicker
Yeah,
from
yeah, 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 yeah.
which was one of my favorite sequences from that whole series too.
Same,
Like
same.
I love when authors just go big like this. Like this is one of the things you can do in SFF. There are no boundaries
Yeah,
for what you can have happen on the page, and you could just people can live hundreds, thousands of different versions of the next few minutes of their life, like and live through all these different deaths. Like it is so intense, it goes so big, it's like mind-blowing stuff, and I love when SFF authors go there, because yeah, it just expands your horizons of the types of experiences you can, what you thought were possible, and you can get to experience them vicariously with the characters. Oh man, it was
100.
so intense. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a
but
wellspring for the imagination for sure. Like it's like,
but
yeah. Go ahead, go
back
ahead.
to
Sorry.
the Danu sequence, you mentioned it a little bit before about the Ushara, like getting into the minds of the Danuans. Like that was so scary. I thought we were going to be coasting after the end of like his battle with Daraica. I thought we were going to be coasting towards a bit of like a down sequence of like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like it's like regathering
Calm before the
and
storm. Yeah,
all
yeah,
of it, like they rescued all these people, and all of a sudden all hell starts to break loose where people are attacking each other on these rescue ships, and we don't know as reader what's going on. And Adrian has no clue, and then everyone's just fighting against family members, friends, comrades. It
yeah,
took such a dark turn. Like that is one of the most like horror filled darkest
yeah,
moments. Like oh my god, like it went full horror for a little bit there, and then for Hadrian becomes the true nightmare when Ushara infiltrates Cassandra, and like
man.
I didn't
Yeah,
even like that was such a like oh my god, is this the end for Cassandra? Like are we going to be able to get Ushara out? Because
yeah,
like it took Hadrian being taken to the end of the world, end of the universe, and to find like get the help of Regama and one of the big supernatural watcher beings to like dispel Ushara from him before. So like we don't know if Cassandra is going to be able to get like healed
yeah.
from that, which was
And it
so
was
scary
around
for
that
us and
time.
Hadrian. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no. I was gonna say, yeah, it was around that time that Christopher Rocchio kind of alludes to the fact that there's not going to be necessarily a happy reunion ending for Cassandra and Hadrian,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's like that. I forget exactly how he would word it, but it was very cryptic, where that juxtaposition with this whole Ushara infiltrating Cassandra, you think like, oh man, this is the end for her. I don't know, but
Yeah,
yeah, he
I
keeps
was
you
always
guessing.
worried. I was always worried for her. I was feeling like he wasn't going to kill Cassandra. Like that
Mm,
might have felt like we would have been getting too dark for Hadrian. Of like I felt like Rocchio overall has this optimistic, heroic bent to the
totally,
story, and so I
totally.
one of my guesses was that eventually they might go their separate ways, and Hadrian would, I don't know what would happen to Hadrian, and he has to go into hiding after. But I was thinking she was likely going to be okay, but he did such a great job of doing things like having her be possessed, of like, oh, okay, is she gonna live but she's possessed, and then later on when he's getting rescued from the outside of Darrentoon ship, and they go through the first deaths of Lorien
Yeah,
killing Cassandra, and like I was faked out genuinely.
me too, me
Like
too.
it was like a jaw dropped moment. It was still believable because like I had believed that like Lorien was like he doesn't have the same religious beliefs as Hadrian. He is trying to manage his own power base at this moment and like manage his
Mm,
own future, and like it was like believable that he might, you know, try to, maybe turn at that moment.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I found it like upsetting, but it was like it was done in a way where I thought that was what happened in that. Wow, okay, that got so dark.
Mm.
Not only did Cassandra die, but she was killed at the hands of Hadrian's best friend and most trusted friend,
Yeah.
and but then after it starts happening again and again, we as a reader end up coming to realize, and Hadrian does, that this was Ushara trying to deceive him, and it's this deception, and it still was very miserable for Hadrian having to live through
Yeah.
all this
It reminded me of
iterations. But
Kingdoms
like,
of Death kind of torture, you know?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
horrific that he has to endure that. But then when we get out of that, and Ushara is no longer deceiving him with these visions, and we get Hadrian rescuing him, and Lorien rescuing them, and
Mm.
it doesn't play out that way. Like, that was so satisfying to go on that arc there of that dramatic turn. The way Racchio pulled that off, it was like this emotional roller coaster. I'm
Totally,
like,
totally.
okay, Lorien hasn't gone to the dark side like that.
But it
Um,
leaves you
yeah.
guessing. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I love that. But man, the the Watchers, man, Ushara is such an intense kind of presence throughout this. But I do want to touch on a kind of maybe downside of this read for you that I saw in your wrap up.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That
yeah.
you felt like some of the confrontations that happened, I'm guessing, maybe Hadrian's final confrontation with Doreika maybe were a little anticlimactic, and I want to introduce this discussion of like this final confrontation a little bit, where I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
Racchio
yeah.
undercut the impact of the Hadrian Doreika confrontation by
Totally, yeah.
more like making him the puppet of the Watchers, uh, and feeling like the Watchers are the real kind of antagonist that Hadrian has to
Mm-hmm.
defeat here,
Yeah.
and that definitely,
Did you feel
yeah,
that way?
yeah,
Or
I
yeah.
did. I was definitely confused with the whole final confrontation with Doreika, and it wasn't overly dramatic or uh, emotional in the resolution. It just kind of like quickly ended where this random other character being that we haven't met yet kind of clocked him over the head, and
Mm-hmm.
he has this hollow skull, and he's dead, and
It felt
yeah,
too
yeah,
easy in a way. Yeah. It,
yeah, yeah.
there was a theory I was reading on some Reddit thread or something about how, because you know how I think Hadrian mentions like, oh, the quiet has multiple forces at play.
Mm-hmm.
So Hadrian was one of a few forces. One being the that being that threw the cup that at Dorica's head. And so, but we see everything through Hadrian's point of view, so everything feels like he is the main story in a lot of ways, but he's also one of the main stories. Maybe, I don't know. That's an
Yeah,
interesting thought.
and this will require a reread to really get
Yeah,
into if
yeah,
I'm looking
right.
out for it. But I feel like there was after that moment of like Drake theoretically getting killed, that there were moments where like it felt like Draco's essence was still living on, like with
Hmm.
Ushara, or like Hadrian would hear things. There were things like spoken like the way Draco would have said them to Hadrian.
Yeah,
But I don't know if that was just Ushara's presence from before in Draco
right.
speaking through Draco, or like
Yeah,
or if like Draco was actually kind of living on in this combined kind of immortality
state.
with Ushara, which I that will require a reread to really dig
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
what's
I had the
going on
same
there.
I had the same kind of confusion as well. I didn't know if Doriac had lived on, or also, how in that flicker scene, it's like, oh, when Cassandra's death happens quite suddenly in that first instance, and we kind
Mm-hmm.
of believed that wasn't a fake out or something. When Doriaca also dies quite suddenly, uh I my first instinct was, oh, maybe this is another fake out, but then it wasn't to be, and then I was like,
Yeah,
damn it, I wanted to see like a whole thing.
yeah,
um
yeah.
yeah.
No, the one of the downsides of like the fake outs is, yeah, you're not sure, like, ooh, did this play
Mhm.
out how we were presented it, or um, so you're more on your guard for or like not trusting everything exactly.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
which is a legit downside to doing some of those kind of interesting fake out things.
Totally, totally.
But
I also,
yeah, the Dracula thing is interesting because I felt like, you know, in Kingdoms of Death, it's just such an intense villainous presence, and that had been building throughout all the books as we kind of hear about Dracula, and then finally meets. And uh, yeah, I felt like that was an anticlimactic aspect of the whole
mhm,
series, and one of the downsides of pushing the Watchers as more like the main kind of villains behind the Cielson
yeah,
threat. And
yeah.
yeah, I'm
Same,
not sure
same.
exactly how I would have preferred that to play out. Like maybe they're just, you know, more, you know, helping Doreika supplementally, and Doreika is still like the primary villain they have to overcome. And you know, once Hadrian defeats Doreika, and that those Watchers just kind of like fade into the background, and they're not like the ultimate thing he has to destroy. I don't know how I would have done it
Like I
differently.
could almost
Yeah.
imagine, you know, it almost felt like the Watchers were sucking him dry. So
Yeah.
Doraika was
Yeah.
almost becoming weakened by the Watchers, which is why he was so easy to kill at the end.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been cooler, at least just me, you know, I'm just a reader, you know, what do I know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it would have been cool to have them strengthen Doraika,
Yeah.
actually, and
Yeah.
made him a even larger than life presence, which would make him even more difficult to defeat than, let's say, in Kingdoms of Death. I think that would have been
Yeah.
cooler to see on the page, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a theological thing going on that maybe
Mm.
is at play here, which is why we're maybe clashing with a little bit. Like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
there is this theological argument almost of like Doreika convinced that, you know, by siding with these Watchers, who are kind of like fallen angels, that
Mm.
they're gonna destroy this creation, and he's gonna then sit on top of this, you know, chaos that's going to arise. But I think Hadrian is trying to convince him like, you're just being lied to. They're deceiving you.
Yeah.
They just want to like end all creation, and you're not going to have any place in that. And I think with the way that we are presented all the supernatural stuff with
Mm.
the absolute, the quiet, like that Hadrian is correct in this like theological debate, and like I don't necessarily, and so like it all makes sense why Doreika would have this just unceremonious end.
Yeah,
Like it
yeah.
makes sense within the plot and the within like the theology that like Rocchio has set up.
Fair.
But
Yeah.
I I wasn't always connecting to some of this, and it felt at times in Disquiet Gods when we, you know, meet the Judicator and hear
Mm.
more about like everything that's gone on with the Quiet, and it felt like it was veering towards a little bit of like Christian allegory,
Yeah.
and there, things were like starting to correspond a little bit one to one from like Christian
Totally.
theology
Totally. Yeah.
to the theology in this world. And I think I just connect more to fantasy and sci-fi stories where there's more mystery, and there aren't like these clear experiences that characters have to like confirm certain, you know, spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs or the way
Yes.
things are.
Yeah.
And like Hadrian is like absolutely convinced of his theology and the absolute, and rightfully so. And it seems to be the truth of this universe. But
Was
it's,
really.
yeah, a little bit anticlimactic for me that like, you know, this basically omnipotent being has put these pieces into place. And yes, there's this big discussion of like still leaves people the chance for free will, but it all felt a little bit distanced for me about like, you
Mm.
know, like you were talking about in your wrap up of characters maybe not having as much agency.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, I think one of the reasons I loved the Sun Eater series from the very beginning was that it was spiritually nebulous. Like, if you
Mm.
look at certain instances in what it talks about, like, there's a planet called Anicca, which is like Annica, which actually is a Pali name for impermanence. So it's
Oh
a very
wow.
much a Zen kind of meditative concept. And you know, the idea of the quiet giving him powers, like between the quiet and anicca, there's a meditation practice called vipassana, which was like a Buddhist uh, practice that's been around for 2,500 years or so, and it's basically that idea of getting, you know, inner power from the quiet, from the silence, you know.
Mm.
And so there were aspects of that I found interesting. Then that if that was combined with any Christian theological stuff. And then there was, of course, the Greek Roman stuff, like the Catholic
Mhm.
stuff. You know, if it's a combination of all these things, I feel like without leaning in one particular direction, I feel like that's one part that made it really
Yeah.
interesting, and it became more of leaning in one direction. I think in the last couple books.
Yeah. And I think it was chapter 40 in that sequence in Disquiet Gods where, we're taken to the cradle where the Quiet's egg is, and he's
Mm,
having this big conversation with kind of the Ragama, like the non-fallen angel who's still he's still like doing his duties, um and I don't know, that peek behind the curtain, it just didn't do much for me overall. Like I
yeah,
wish it would have made like it would have maintained more mystery for Hadrian too, like that Hadrian would have had to just have more faith or belief in his own sense of what's right and wrong, um and to
totally.
not have it just like firmly based in these experiences he's had of the supernatural that like
Mm, mm,
confirmed
mm.
for sure 100% like certain things,
Yeah,
and the repetition of things like this must be like, I don't know, the fact of it all being very like put in concrete for us, uh it kept me a little bit distance, I think, from the overall like ending to the series, books 6 and 7. uh
yeah, yeah. I agree with
yeah.
that. I totally agree with that. I felt the same way. It's like, you know, he always says, "I only have to choose." Right? There's all these possibilities, and I only have to choose. The ironic thing was the focus of the thematic being a chosen thing ended up actually limiting it in a way. I liked the idea of the possibilities was kind of the cool part about it.
Yeah, and I feel like he could have just left it more mysterious, and like,
Yeah, yeah,
Hadrian is
agreed.
granted this mysterious power to see through time and all these
Mhm.
possibilities of his present self and be able to choose. Like, when it was left very mysterious in Demon of White, and he was having this trippy experience of being shown some visions and first given this power, like, yeah, I was just more transported into his experience, and and yeah, that the more it kind of came into focus of like what was going on behind the curtain, it
Yeah, yeah.
some of that the overall connection to the story started to decrease for me, and like I think I was confused at the very end where he was still like doubting some things, and then he got this message from Pratanus, the extra Solarian, who said, "We see this message in the cosmic background," and he printed it out on the paper.
Mm.
And this was great suspense on Rocky's part. Like I wanted to know what was on the paper, and
Yeah,
he kept on
yeah,
referring to like the paper, and it gave him certainty. And finally, when we got the message, I didn't know what it meant or
I
like what
didn't.
the reference was. It was first of all,
We're-
there was a misprint because it was only 6 words. And I'm like, did we miss a word here? Because they kept on saying 7 words on the paper. It
right.
was like Marlowe, Marlowe, where were you when? I'm like, are we missing a word? Like, and apparently it was a misprint of like they left out one of the Marlas, and in the new printings, it's gonna have the 3 Marlas to be
Really?
7 words. Yeah, yeah.
No
But
way.
but
Wow.
I found, luckily someone was able to point me that was a reference to a line in Disquiet Gods. So
Mm.
the very last thing the Quiet says to Hadrian in that sequence is, "Where were you when like I laid the foundations of the earth?" I think,
Oh
which is
wow. Yeah.
actually, which I didn't know, but I found this out, is quoting the book of Job and our Bible. And it's part of like this argument that God's having with Job, like, why are you doing all these bad things to me? And God is saying, like, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Like, you don't know why I would do what I'm doing, or
Yeah.
these things are well beyond your ability to comprehend them. And so like in the story, the paper basically just, it showed Hadrian like, oh, like he's sent this message to me like billions of years ago at the start of our universe. Like I can trust that, go according to plan, and I can have faith in this. But like, I don't know, it still left me a little cold there. Like I don't necessarily need
Same.
that like, supernatural theological dimension here to give our character that certainty. Like, yeah, that wasn't doing too much. And the fact of it even quoting, uh, our real life religious text, like I don't know, that
I know what you
that
mean.
doesn't
Yeah.
add to it. That
And
doesn't. Yeah.
I felt like it wasn't a good enough excuse for Hadrian to make the decisions he made.
Hmm.
To me, that you know, I felt like he had gone against all odds to defeat the Watchers, defeat the Cielsen, and you know his decisions in that moment allowed the Chantry basically to run free, and has the consequences
Yeah.
for him when he gets captured, and God knows what happened to Celine, and you know, and he may never see Cassandra again, right? And it's like, I don't know, what did you think of that whole sequence?
Yeah. I was just like devouring the whole ending few hundred
Yeah,
pages because I just wanted to see what was gonna happen. I like,
right,
especially
right,
after the incredible action sequence. Like there was so much just riveting stuff that was going on uh, in the gigantic action sequence where we're fighting the Cielsen, the Watchers. We finally destroy use the Sun Eater weapon, and then the Watchers, Shara and Mjolnir
mm,
seemingly are destroyed, possibly,
gone,
or
yeah,
or
yeah,
weakened, and then we're at this point in the story where like, okay, we don't know where this is heading at all. Like we were
right,
only ever told that he, destroyed the sun and kind of won the war. And yeah, that I would say generally I was satisfied with like the ending and how it
hmm,
played out with um like there being a bit of a power struggle where I did not expect like the emperor to try to name Hadrian his successor and
yeah, yeah,
him
yeah,
to marry Celine. And first it made sense. I'm like, oh, okay, Celine's going to be the successor, and then oh no, it's going to be you.
hmm,
And then they're trying to figure out like a alliance possibly, and use Nicephorus and the keys, and I'm like, okay, maybe like he is going to become a temporary emperor.
right,
Like I was so curious, and then just like them getting completely trapped by the Chantry. Like
mm,
I don't know, that all was working because it felt like suitable for where we know Hadrian is left just like on his own, this
yeah,
figure who's maligned in the propaganda history that we know is going to be taking place later. And like I was curious how he got to that present point, and so it made
yeah,
sense that like the Chantry would essentially take control through Alexander and sentence him to death. Like that whole last sequence of him being taken prisoner, having this like heart to heart with Basander Lin, like that hit really hard for me.
yeah, yeah,
Where Basander is this supporter, and he's telling him to go and spread like the resistance essentially. And like I really loved that hit for me. And Hadrian dealing with all this unjust hatred and persecution,
mm,
and but knowing that we know that he's gonna like be brought back to life and come back and be able to go a separate way and tell his story. Like it I don't know, that whole ending was working for me. um
yeah, yeah,
it was,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
No,
go for it.
I was just gonna say is, I think for me, I was I was like really upset when I finished the book for those last 100 pages, because I was like, I just felt bad. Like I felt bad that
Yeah.
Celine, like, you know, I felt like Celine and Cassandra were done dirty in the ending of it. You know, it's, you kind of don't know where they are. I felt bad that the Emperor had told Hadrian to destroy the Chantry once and for all. He had the weapons to do it, and obviously he didn't want to use it to like destroy Earth. But I feel like Hadrian was such a political genius. There had to
Yeah.
be another way. Like it could not be just, oh, we destroy all of Earth, the last vestiges of, you know, eternal, the eternal, I forget what it's called, city is destroyed. But okay, Earth is the last bastion of, you know, human roots, and of course can't destroy that. And that's where the Chantry are. So there's got to be something else. Like it can't be just,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just
it
gonna give, yeah,
it does. I did expect maybe Hadrian to want to put up more of a fight against the Chantry, like
yeah.
just this really evil, corrupt, power hungry faction that he's saddling the galaxy with. But
Mhm.
like he also was thinking about collateral damage if he just tried to basically destroy Earth, and felt
Yeah.
like it was gonna be too immoral of an act, and like that. Uh, and I kind of bought that argument. And
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think he was tired and feeling like he doesn't want to be an emperor. First of all, he
Yeah.
doesn't want any of this that he's being currently kind of saddled with, and that he felt like he didn't have any visions from the quiet about what to do going forward. Like he
Mm.
basically reached the end of his story, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I was gonna compare it to another series. I'll do that when we're not
Sure. Sure.
on camera for spoiler reasons. But
I get. I get that.
it's like he felt like that was the end of his time in the spotlight, which I think is a little bit contrived. Like it is more like Rocchio is done telling Hadrian's story. Like this is
Right.
everything he wanted Hadrian's story to encompass is really what's starting from Empire of Silence to Shadows Upon Time. And if there are going to be other stories that he's telling, it's not going to be Hadrian's.
Right.
That
Right.
he's now on the sidelines, and so like, yeah, to a certain extent, I think it's a little bit contrived, and that he, as an author, wants Hadrian's story to be done, and so he kind of has these dominoes falling,
Sure. Sure.
and
Yeah.
Hadrian's just kind of going along with it. But I do think I buy it though, because Hadrian is so tired. He's been through so much. I want Hadrian to, be able to go off into his solitude and be out of the spotlight and
Live his Scolias dreams.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, the Cassandra fate and Selene fates, they weren't bothering me. Like it felt like there was a little bit of hope around Cassandra, of like Cassandra also, like Cassandra Lynn, kind of going off and spreading resistance, and finding it, like connecting with Hadrian's long lost sister, and planting a seed of resistance. Like I felt like there was some kernels of hope there. And then Selene, though, that's a strange one. Like that was very sad. Like Selene took on more of a prominent role in this book than I expected, and I became more attached to her character and thought like, oh yeah, as a kind of second romantic life, that Hadrian's able to actually find some happiness with Selene is nice. And they seem to be a well-matched couple in a lot of ways, and she's very understanding and has lots of strength in varied ways. But like people have been putting forth theories around like Hadrian being a bit of an unreliable narrator with regard to Selene, of like he expects people to read these memoirs, and maybe like the Chantry and Alexander to be reading these, and that he's maybe trying to protect Selene by not writing what actually happened to her, or like people were theorizing that maybe like Selene did end up with Hadrian, but he's hiding that fact. I don't know.
There's a mention of like two. He says like two bowls, and he's like sitting there with two bowls or two cups or something in one particular scene, like when he's by himself. Almost insinuating maybe, hey, there is someone else there. Could it be Selene? So I hope that's what it is. That made me feel a little bit better hearing that theory.
Yeah, I mean, I was just happy that basically she wasn't killed outright in that public scene where she's confronting Alexander, and I loved seeing her try to stand up to Alexander. Alexander, like I really love that character. It's like I have come to hate him so much, but in the way of like I find him compelling, as like he's pitiful. Like I feel so bad for him. I can see how he's been corrupted, and it could have gone a different way, and how Hadrian played his own role in that by pushing Alexander away and not doing a better job nurturing the better parts of him, and seeing Alexander still like be like someone who cares about his sister, and who's not just like summarily executing her for standing up to him, like he had like he doesn't also like just completely turn on his father. Like I love what Rocchio did with that character. It's just very believable for like this type of character who's put in this situation. But didn't feel cliche or anything. Loved Alexander in this.
Me too, and I love how the seeds are sown in Demon in White. Kind of already know he's going to play more of a prominent role. I guess Hadrian was his villain or origin story.
yeah. Oh, but so sad. Like, and Hadrian doesn't even think about like killing Alexander or deposing him is not going to solve this problem. Like the Chantry will just find other puppets.
Yeah.
And he realizes, the Chantry is the real evil here that like the rest of the galaxy is gonna be having to deal with, and like he
Yeah.
gives them a head start, or well, the Chantry does this themselves, where they kill Nicephorus and they lose any possibility of getting those genetic keys, and so
Mm.
now I'm thinking of like a lot of the Palatine houses might be in rebellion, and I'm so curious. I want him to return to this world and try
Me
to
too.
continue and
Yeah.
fill in what's going on. We get like a little hint, like if you read the prologue to the Diamond Edition. Have you done that? The
No,
first
actually, I
letter.
haven't. I
Oh
haven't.
my goodness! So there's one glimpse into the future that we really have so far is the the prologue to the Diamond Edition is the first letter of Imra, which is this. Uh, so like, why it's Rakio's way of like explaining why there's a revised edition of Hadrian's memoir in World. It's because
Wow.
this descendant of Siren is Imra, and who like found the manuscript and is like doing a new translation, and trying to like carry forth Hadrian's message, and there's hints about like what's happened in the future. Um,
Holy crap! I gotta
so a
read
few,
the. I gotta
few
read this now.
generations, a few generations into the future, from where the series even ended. So yeah, like that's I feel like he's gonna do some more cool prologues for the rest of the Diamond editions too.
Well,
But
that's amazing.
but it just made
More
me want
Sun
more.
Eater.
Like there's hints
Yeah.
about like the kind of like unrest and basically like the wars and that are basically unfolding now with um the corrupt serpent in
Wow.
power. So
Oh man,
yeah.
I can't wait to read this now. It's
Yeah, it's
great.
only a couple pages, but it was like when I read that before, I read it before Shadows Upon Time. It
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
oh my goodness, this is so cool. You know, I do think he's going to return, because he said, he likely will return, just not with Hadrian books, but like he
Yeah.
did all this groundwork of all of this incredible
Yeah, oh yeah.
building and the political world building. I love the different like cultural and political world building he does with the different human cultures, and the Lothrians and the Jadians and the
Totally.
Solons, and the diversity within the Solon Empire. Like there's so much really lively, interesting world building that he can play around with here. With new stories, and I'm excited. But this one, even with some gripes that are gonna keep it from becoming
Sure.
that true, just like personal all-time favorite that connected with me on every possible level. Like it was still, I'm so thankful for the journey. It was still so worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah.
It was, man. I'm treasuring these books, and overall, I'm happy with the way he landed the plane, and it is a way that felt
Yeah.
satisfying, and is not gonna have me ready to sell all my books here.
Right, right, right.
I'm gonna treasure these and reread, and I feel like there's so much reread value from everything you learn too here, and you'll be able to read so much more into all these different factions and things,
And
and
politicking and stuff. Yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah, and he I think he had the ideas for this in mind when he started. Like he said that he always had this ending in mind, and he was
Mm-hmm.
writing the series to build up to these things he had envisioned. And so I love when authors really have this coherent vision and
Yeah,
plan,
yeah.
and they're able to seed so many foreshadowing things early on, and details from all these different books, and kind of cohere, and you
Totally,
can reread and
totally.
find all these new gems as you reread. But we skipped over a little bit of the meat of like the climactic area. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna have to run because it's getting late here, on the for us, especially me on the East Coast.
Sure,
But
yeah, yeah.
any last thoughts on kind of that big giant climactic section? Like I was just loving Hadrian trying to coordinate with the emperor, and trying to getting onto his ship in the middle of the battle, and having the emperor kind of name him the successor, and then fighting out of
Yeah.
that ship, and Olorin comes back and is helping them. Like and I had a great time with a lot of the action there
Me
in
too,
that
me
in that
too.
section. Yeah.
There were times when I felt like all hope was lost, and then Lorien would come in clutch,
Yes.
and like, and the use of the Sun Eater, I felt like that whole sequence of the use of it and like hitting the sun, and they going, oh, we won't actually know for an hour. It's you can't even see it for an hour because of the distances and time scales and stuff. So
Yeah.
I felt like it was
Yeah.
very accurate representation of what it must have felt like being on the Demiurge at that moment, and I felt
Yeah.
like I was there. It was so cool.
Yeah,
It
that's
was one of
I
my
love
favorite.
the
Yeah,
sci-fi aspects that he does kind of hew to in terms of like the hard sci-fi they add such a level of immersion and authenticity to it of like in Star Wars scenes, as the viewer, we see the moment the bolt goes into the Death Star and we see the Death Star blow up and it all
yeah,
happens
yeah,
instantaneously, but here, it's fire at will, or and then we don't see or hear anything, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
we think maybe Lorian got caught up in that, and later we hear that he rode the supernova to escape, and just little details like that are just fantastic, and
Hundred
add to that
percent.
that
Yeah.
overall immersion for me in this. And but yeah, were there any other moments in there that stand out that uh, just trying to
God,
think, man, so that is
there
such a
was so much.
yeah, it was, which I love like a big chunky. I don't feel shortchanged with
Right.
this,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, to be building up to this Gododin sequence for so long since the beginning. I think it totally paid off, and yeah,
Hell yeah.
so
Me too.
so for
For
me, it
me as well.
left me satisfied. I would, I generally, I don't know if this is wise to judge the impact based on like if it produces like a physical emotional response for me where I'm shedding tears, but this book never got me to that point. It got me close a few times, I think,
Mm,
towards the end, and as Hadrian maybe is heading towards his execution and
yeah.
communing with Sander, like it definitely was getting me a little choked up here and there. Maybe his last farewell with Cassandra, where Hadrian
Yeah.
like
That
trying
was.
to push her away, and like we know, like he's planning to not really maybe ever see her again, but he's trying to tell her like, oh, we'll see each other. That hit emotionally, but I never was brought to this overly intense like emotional response like I was in maybe some of my other really treasured reads, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, Sun Eater has never maybe connected with me, on that like really sentimental, like emotional
Yeah.
level. Um, maybe like Realm of the Elderlings or some Guy Gavriel K books have, or um, and but even without that, uh, it was just so absorbing. And when a book wants me to read it, when I just want to do nothing but read it in my free time, stay up late,
Yeah.
like feel like a kid again, trying to devour, see what happens. Like, man, that's why I do this, and
Yeah.
why this is, what the way I'm spending almost all of my free time these days. Uh,
Same. Same.
hobby
Exactly the
for my
same.
life. And it's
That's the
it's
best.
fun too to,
Yeah.
yeah, to be able to gush with others about it, and to be able to chat with you is why I started this booktube channel, to be able to connect with people all around the world and that are
Yeah.
reading the same books. And
Here.
so this
Here.
was this
Yeah.
was a blast. I had an awesome time today, Nikhil.
Dude, me too. Honestly, it was. I had such a fun time chatting with you about this because there's so much to cover, and I feel like we both read it with a similar kind of approach to the book, and we liked some of the similar things, and it was really cool to hear your perspective on it. Um, yeah, this
Oh,
was awesome, man. Thank you so much for
same, right
having me
back at you.
on.
And yeah, and in close to 2 hours, we could not even come close to covering everything that happened in this
Right,
in this
right.
book. There's still plenty, especially with rereads, and just to dig back in and mine all the amazing stuff in here. But just
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
want to thank Chris Verrocchio for the incredible journey he took us on, and just yeah, I have felt like someone writing at that young of an age to have that command of this epic story. It felt to me like he is just like a writing prodigy of our time. That
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
we're
100%.
lucky to be able to read his books as he's writing them, and interact with him. I had him on my channel and interviewed him, and it's just
Oh,
so
that's
cool
so
to
cool.
be able to. And I met him at Dragonsteel last year too, and I got to chat with him a lot there, and personalize some of the books for me. And
Oh, that
it's
is so
it's just
cool, man.
it's fun to actually be able to have relationships with authors that are it's just such a cool aspect of the community these days. And
Totally.
and
Yeah.
to be able to also just see him and interact with others and hear him speak and get a feel for who he is as a person. I feel like I have this whole greater understanding of the series and what's informed it, and
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
really special one for me. So thanks
absolutely, man.
for talking through everything. And
Thank you, Ben.
if you stuck with us so far, I hope you enjoyed the chat, and let us know in the comments how you felt about the book, and just what about it you really loved, or and anything we talked about really connected with you. Love to hear about it, and we'll see you all later.
Bye.